see if looks like audio is coming through. What's up, everyone in the chat? I think we've got a few people here. Co-stacker is here to figure out if we fixed the issue from last week, and yes, that issue has been fixed. I actually sent an email that included like a tiny bit of detail about that after the end of the last one. But yeah, we can talk about that. And Max Programming is here saying he checked out a debugging video that I have on YouTube. That's super cool. Really glad to hear that that was helpful for you. And this is the point in the process where I need to make sure that my stuff is on mute. And I don't think I have anything I need to hear, but just in case, I'm gonna throw my headphones on. Anybody else in the chat? If you're here, give a shout out. Coriano's here. Oh, that reminds me, since Coriano's here, if you're watching this inside of Podia, I think it actually shows you the instructions while you're watching it. But if you're watching inside of Podia, there should be, actually I could show you this. Let me pull it up. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I don't want people, if you're watching in Podia, to be limited and not be able to ask questions. So if you are inside of Podia, this is what you'll do. You will, let me actually see. Let me mute this, make sure you can't hear it. So I'm watching myself, and then click on this watch on YouTube button, and that will take you to the actual YouTube stream where you can leave comments. So you can comment and ask questions and stuff in there. So if you're inside of Podia, make sure you jump over to the stream actually in YouTube so that you can ask questions, which is a big part of what this is. So Coriano's here. JC is here also. Excited to have you both. Coriano and JC are both members of the tech community here in Memphis. So it's really cool to have some support from the people in Memphis. Anybody else in the chat? Let me know if you're here, and if I don't already know you, give an intro to who you are and maybe the stuff that you're interested in. Actually, Max Programming, if you don't mind giving me a little intro, I'd love to hear that, because I don't know if we know each other or not, but I think everybody else, at least so far that I've seen in here, I know to some extent. I'll always give CodeStacker, who's in here. CodeStacker is an amazing YouTube channel as well on web development. So if you haven't followed or seen CodeStacker stuff, definitely go and check out his channel as well. Boogie Bum is back for part 2. What's up, Boogie Bum? Awesome. Max is jumping right in here with, is React better than Vue? I mean, it's totally up to you, right? Like all that question, there's no answer for that question. It's whatever you think works for you. I would say build the same project in both and just see which one you like the best. I know they're both incredibly popular. React is more popular, but a lot of people are either really using Vue or giving it a shot, and they really love it. So I've definitely heard of people moving from React to Vue that really enjoy it, but React is also crazy super popular too. So I personally wouldn't overthink is one better than the other. Just give them a shot and see what happens. JC says, to share this, do you prefer people to view via YouTube or sign up for Podia? JC, it's okay either way. So this is actually, like, in theory, I would make this a unlisted stream so that only people with the URL could get to it, and I would only give the URL out through the Podia sign up. The reason I'm also making it public is just to broaden the audience, and then for the people who sign up through Podia, I can do things like send out resources and recap emails after, and then send a reminder email. So it's a good way for me. Like if I advertise a YouTube URL beforehand, it's easy to misplace that or forget where it is. So like if people are signing up through Podia, I have the ability to give them reminders and resources and stuff. So that's what I would prefer. But it is an open URL as well, so you can just share it with people if you want to. Max Programming, been following the YouTube channel for weeks, 15 years old, from India. Started learning Vue, but ended up learning React. Awesome. I can't even imagine being 15 and learning programming. That's super cool. I didn't learn anything at all. I had never seen any programming until college. So I think that's really cool. I'm glad you found really early on something that you're excited about. So yeah, React or Vue, whatever you decide is, I think, a good decision. And then Darsha, hopefully that's close pronunciation, from Nepal. Very cool. I love seeing how many people come and join these things from across the world. I think that's like the power of these webinars and streams and stuff. So welcome to you as well. So I'm going to do, like, in a second, I'll do a recap of last week, because last week was really the core of like what this webinar is. So this is a part 2. What you see on the screen now is like kind of the demo of what we did last week. And we're just going to build upon that. And my goal is to have this be like an application that we can at least share with people and have them use. And JC just shared the stream in here. I did a rookie mistake and did not turn on Do Not Disturb. So thanks, JC, for sharing that in the Code Connector channel. And then shame on me for not actually, for being a noob and not actually hiding notifications on a stream. So before we get started, I love conversation. I love questions. I love commentary. If you have anything, I guess, like, here's kind of a getting started question. What kind of things are you working on? Anybody have any side projects that they're working on? Or anything that you're learning? Max Programming mentioned React and Vue. Anything that you're learning or working on, I'd love to hear from you. Just throw it in the chat. Give us a little bit of stuff just to kind of riff off of as we go through. And I'll give, 1, a few seconds to wait for that to come through to your side so that you can respond. And then 2, we'll give another minute or 2 to give people time to jump in, and then we'll get started. Also, in the meantime, if you have any questions, maybe from what we did last week, or what we're going to cover today, throw that in there as well, and then we'll dive in a couple minutes. Prem Kumar, hey, what's up? How's it going? Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Glad to have you here. I just did a stream with a couple of people from our programming YouTubers chat, kind of like a fireside chat thing where we talked about imposter syndrome and messing up and learning, and that was a lot of fun. So we recorded that earlier, about 2 hours ago, and then I've been working on a couple of demos. One I think would actually be really interesting for people. If you want to see it, maybe we'll stick around and talk a little bit about that at the end. Max Programming says many projects pending. Yeah, that's where we all are, I think, or at least me. Like, I've always got something I want to work on, and then it's just all about like actually executing and finishing it. So Max is also from India. Very cool. Talking to Prem, who thinks Prem is from India. I think it was Adarsha said from Nepal. So maybe Prem is from India as well. Learning GraphQL. Cool. I have used GraphQL a decent amount. I'm still not super comfortable with the syntax, honestly. But yeah, that's really, really popular. Definitely a great thing. Definitely a great thing to check out. Question here from Adarsha. Do you suggest people to use context and use Reducer or React Redux? I personally, the biggest thing I think for Redux is like when you're getting into a bigger scaled application. The stuff that you see here now, the stuff that you see in my videos won't really be a huge scale of like an immense amount of data to keep track of. So I've only used Redux actually in a course that I took on React. I've never used it myself outside of that for personal projects or anything like that. I love the context API in React. The course that I have actually uses the context API. And I think it's really simple, especially the combination of use context and use hooks is really, really cool. I don't like use Reducer is also really useful. I'm kind of new to that, honestly. So once you get into logic where you're conditionally changing multiple different things, you might jump to a use Reducer, and combining that with use context keeps you within the React ecosystem specifically. No external packages, and I think just is pretty powerful. So you can probably solve the majority of your issues with use context and use Reducer. But if you have experience with Redux or you want to try it out or whatever, that's totally fine too. So. All right, let's get into, I guess what we built last week. And you see the demo here. It doesn't look that great. Some of what we'll do today is add some styling and some structures to this. But basically what this is supposed to be is this is a website called Dev Setup. So this is a place where people can upload, or developers can upload images of their desk setups. This is actually a really popular thing for people to do. You see people post about it on Twitter and all sorts of stuff all the time. And I wanted to have that be the demo that we build by combining React and Serverless. So some of the things that we're using here is we're using React, obviously. I hope that's kind of the expectation coming into this. And then we are storing images. So we're letting users upload images and store those in Cloudinary. So Cloudinary is a media platform that that you can use to store images and optimize images and transform images and really just crazy cool amounts of stuff inside of Cloudinary. And I am relatively new to Cloudinary and am a Cloudinary, a media developer expert, which is sponsored by Cloudinary. And so now I'm kind of getting into talking about Cloudinary and image management and assets and optimization and that sort of stuff. So first and foremost, we're storing those images inside of Cloudinary. So if you upload an image, that will get stored in Cloudinary, and you can see those images are actually stored. Like here's one of them right here. I wanted to store those in a particular folder. I don't know what I was missing. Something went wrong where that didn't work. In theory, those are supposed to be inside of this dev setups folder. So that is one thing I still have to figure out. But the process of just like uploading that image is working, and I think it's really cool. And by the way, for reference, if anyone is interested in the source code for this to check this out, which I would recommend, you can go and see all of that source code there. Prim is asking, do I have plans for React Native course in the future? Not immediately, no. That's actually like React Native is something I've spent almost no time with. That would be a big effort for me, I think, to get to the point where I was comfortable with that. So no immediate plans, but I certainly am interested in the topic. So maybe one day down the road. So let's just kind of talking about the pieces here. Let's talk about a couple of the serverless functions that we have. And one of them is to upload an image. So what I'm using here is Netlify functions, and Netlify CLI gives you a command called Netlify dev. And what this will do is it will run my React front end as well as my serverless functions and then let them talk to each other. So this is my recommendation for anyone's looking to get into serverless functions or just curious about the easiest way to host a website. Netlify is my answer for both of those things and the combination of both of those things. And so you can test basically the whole Netlify environment locally with Netlify dev. So what that does, like I said, is it does two things. It runs the React project, and that serves it at localhost 8888. So this is the React project here. And then it also runs these serverless functions. Now, the way that works is you create a functions directory, and then you tell with the Netlify configuration file, you tell it where your functions directory is, and in this case, it's functions. And then Netlify will serve those functions at port 34567. And you define your functions with just a new file. In this case, we've got 3 get images, hello world as a test, and then upload.js. And by defining, if we look in this hello world here, by defining this function as an exports.handler, Netlify is going to pick that thing up. And then if we go to local, I don't know what shortcut that was, localhost 34567 /.netlify/functions, and then the name of that file, which in this case is hello world, we get back a response. So this is basically just really quick and easy, defining basically endpoints, and Netlify takes care of hosting them once we push it out there, but then also letting us run it locally to be able to test this stuff out. So inside of the source code, again, you can go and look at this and kind of pick it apart. We've got some configuration stuff for Cloudinary, and then we define our endpoint, and we're doing some user validation on here using Auth0 behind the scenes. That's a little bit deeper of a topic. We're basically trying to make sure that like a user authenticates, and then making sure that the request that comes in to upload a user is a real user, if that makes sense. So we'll get the file from the incoming body, and then we'll basically just call upload of that file. So that'll upload it to Cloudinary, and that's what we just saw a second ago. And then we will save a record of that inside of Airtable. So if we look inside of Airtable, we're saving a record here of the image ID. So this is the ID of the image in Cloudinary, along with the username, and then along with the number of likes. So that's something we're going to get to, where we'll add extra like functionality to basically upvote and downvote an image by a user. So that's two of the parts, is interacting with Airtable, which is just the basic way to store data, and then interacting with Cloudinary. And then there's the authentication part of Auth0, which is wrapped into React. And then on the back end in our serverless functions, we're able to do some validation stuff to make sure that the user is who they say they are, and that they have access to upload an image. I'm going to pause there and just kind of give you anyone that's in here time to ask questions about that. And then we'll kind of move on and make some additional progress. And I'll give you my vision for what this is going to, how this is going to change a little bit and what we'll do in this session. So if you have any questions, again, I'll take a few seconds and wait here, throw them in the chat. Make sure that you have a decent high-level understanding of the different pieces so far. And if not, ask. And then we'll move on with what we're going to do in this webinar here. And it's weird. I talk about this all the time. The delay on YouTube is a lot longer than Twitch. So like when I ask a question, I have to wait like 30 seconds for a response. So we'll see if we get any responses coming back here in a few minutes or in a few seconds, hopefully. CodeStacker says tracking. Awesome. Good. Yeah. Those check-ins help also. Like even if you don't have questions, just kind of letting me know that you're still hanging out and paying attention. That's helpful for me as well. So if you have comments like that, throw that in the chat as well. What's Chris on Code is here. What's up, Chris? What's going on? Another good YouTube channel people should check out. Happy Catter Day. Lots of like cat and bunny memes and content from Chris on Code. Question from JC. Cloudinary serves the images, right? Yes. So that's a great question. Inside of Cloudinary, where these images get uploaded, you can see like here's the image ID. And then we save a reference to that image ID in Airtable. So the image is still going to come from Cloudinary, but we're saving the ID in Airtable. And the reason is we can then store additional information about that image, like whose image it is, and then the number of likes that it has. One of the things I didn't show is that inside of the app.js, this is the main part of React. We've got several things in here. We're showing a login button if we're not authenticated. We're showing a log out button if we are authenticated. And then we've got the upload functionality here. And then we've also got the image gallery. So if I look in the image gallery, what it's going to do is it's going to call the serverless function that we have for get images. This get images function will go and select all of the records, or actually the first subset of records out of Airtable, and return those back. And then we use that data down here to pass in the image ID as the public ID for this image component, which actually comes from Cloudinary. So we're referencing that ID and then going and getting it from Cloudinary. So yes, Cloudinary is serving those functions. Another question from Adarsha. What is the difference between hosting on Netlify and hosting on AWS Lambda and AWS S3? Actually, behind the scenes, the serverless functions in Netlify are actually AWS Lambda functions, but all of that is extracted away from you. So from my perspective, it's just so easy to put this stuff on Netlify and let Netlify take care of the rest. I actually, behind the scenes, don't really know how to do all of the same things on AWS directly, but that's the way I want my experience to be. I want it to be as quick and easy as possible, and I don't necessarily care personally what goes on behind the scenes. So even though it is using AWS, I can't speak too much about what it's like to host AWS Lambda and AWS S3 to configure and set those things up specifically. I know there's some tools that help make that easy as well, but Amazon is a little bit intimidating in that it has AWS is, in that it has so many different pieces of functionality. It's kind of overwhelming if you're looking to just do something basic. So Netlify, to me, is the easiest way to start, and it's where I point people to. And that's the reason that we're using this here and in the course that you may be interested in depending on this webinar. All right. So I want to give a little bit about what I'm thinking I will take this project to. So last week, Coriano, who is in the chat, had an idea of like, how can we let users update their images and things like that. And what I'm kind of deciding is I don't want this to be just like a free-for-all of people just like throwing images up here. I'm thinking like each user should have their own image, and they don't have to. They can just kind of log in if they want to, and I guess that could be it. But I I want there to basically just be one image per person. So I think we will go with an idea that Coriano had of like letting a user create or add their image and then being able to update that thing if they want to. Epic Design Lab says AWS is definitely confusing. Yeah, I don't want to get into all of that. That's exactly why I'm doing Netlify. So I just think it's a lot easier and cleaner. And then Coriano says, are you doing a .getignore for the Cloudinary config to keep the key local? So great question as well. I have a .env file, which has all of my environment variables in it. You can see that that .env file is red, and that's because in the .getignore, I am ignoring that .env file. So yeah, you don't want to check that stuff in. Another interesting thing about Netlify, if we look actually, is since this is connected to my, or actually no, this one's not. But anyway, so if you ran Netlify dev with a site that is has a configuration thing to point to your actual Netlify site, when you run it, it will grab those credentials out of Netlify and actually do them just like regular environment variables that I would do in my .env. So I don't even have to have that, but I get in that workflow and I tend to have them. And then obviously, like I said, ignore them. So what I'm thinking is I might set up React Router, and we'll have basically a home page and then a profile page, and then we'll show the user's profile if they are logged in. And on their profile, they can update their image. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. And this is going to tie into all of this, the Cloudinary part, the Airtable part, and React and serverless functions. And I would love it if people kind of contribute along the way. So I'll give you a chance to upload images here in a minute, and we'll just kind of interact that way. Another question, which is great, is Airtable comparable to Trello? I think I may have like skewed the perception of Trello a bit for people because I use Trello as basically a database for a demo that I did recently. And it's not necessarily optimized for that. Trello is amazing. I use it every day for tracking the things that I'm working on and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily optimized as kind of a database. Airtable is similar in the sense that it's just so stupidly easy to set up and use that's the big benefit. So you also get kind of this GUI experience, like that was one of the benefits with Trello, of being able to see and visualize your data. And you can go and add fields and do like anything you want to with it. So think of Trello or Airtable in this case just being basically as simple of a database as you can get, with still like a user interface to be able to customize and update and do things like that with your data. Yeah, great question. All right, I'm actually going to reference something on my blog for a second. And this is for me, just by the way, redesign on my site. Let me know if you have any feedback on this. I kind of like scrambled, actually had fun with it, but scrambled to redesign and deploy this right before doing a new course last week. But on my blog, I've got something in here about, I think, or maybe I never published it, rats. About setting up React Router. This is something like it's not hard. I just have to always kind of look at the specifics in here. Or maybe, oh yeah, so I had run this locally, but I never published it. Anyway, actually, I'll let you into a little secret here. I can go to the source for this post that I just never published inside of my Sanity dashboard, which is where I host all of my content. And let's see, React Router in 5 minutes. Maybe this thing is published. I'm not sure. Anyway, so here's the source for this thing, and I can open this up, down, or I did it in this part. I'm stumbling around. Anyway, so the first thing I want to do is let's stop this and let's do an npm install of React Router DOM. And let's say configure React Router DOM. Let's just go and look at something in here. So here's from LogRocket, basic setup it looks like. And I'll scroll down. And where's some actual snippets? Setting up React Router. All right, that's cool. Now how do I... There we go. So this is kind of what we're looking for here. But I'm going to... I feel like this is actually not a great example of this. But inside of... Let's close out several of these pages. I'm going to open the app.js, and the app.js is basically going to become like the parent for all of my other ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import browser router as router from React Router DOM, and then I'll just kind of leave that for now. And then I'm going to create a directory for pages. And then inside of here, I'll have home. And I'll stub out a functional component. These are just snippets that I have. So if you've seen React, you probably recognize what comes out of here. You may not have seen the fancy snippets. So you can get that from the ES7 React Redux snippets in VS Code. And I'm going to take the, let's see, I'm going to take the image gallery and I'm going to put this inside of home. So I'll say, welcome to dev setups. And then let's import this image gallery. And that'll basically be our homepage. And then we'll have a profile.js and we'll stub this out as well. And this will be profile. And then inside of here, we'll add the upload component. So the user will be able to upload their image there if they want to. And let's go back to the app.js. We don't want to show the upload there. And the last thing we want is probably a navbar of some sort. So we'll create navbar and then RFC. And then we'll take all of this stuff. So this authenticated and showing the login, logout button, we'll do that. And then we need to import those things from Auth0. So I'm moving a little quick here, but this is basically just kind of restructuring some of the code that we have. So ask questions if you have it. But at the end of this, what we'll have, why is that thing? It's called in a function. I don't actually know what's wrong with that. React hook is called inside of a function, which is neither. It is a functional component, so I'm not sure why it's arguing with me there. I wonder if that will go away here in a second. We'll see. Or if you see what I'm missing, let me know as well. So inside of our app, what I really want to actually, let's grab this loading state. During the authentication process, there's potentially some times where things will be loading. So if it's loading, we'll just return back a regular p tag that says loading. And then otherwise, now we want to start to use our browser router. And so we'll actually, I think we rename this to router above in the import right here. And let's get rid of these extra ones. So let's use our router. And then inside of our router, we need to define our routes. And so we'll have a route component here that comes from React Router DOM as well. And then this takes in two different properties. One is the component. So one of these will be home. So we auto import that. And this will be the path. And so the path is like that. Okay. And then we'll also have the profile. So we'll import that thing. I guess we might need to type it out. Import profile from pages profile. And no questions in the chat, so I'll keep on going, but I'm paying attention. So if you have them, throw them in there. And the path for this will be profile. And then we need to set a property on this first one to say exact. So this is going to say only render this home page if it's exactly the root path and not just like root and then something else. All right, and let me double check inside of here. They're using browser router, and I think what we can do. So there might be a question. Is this the same project you will be teaching on your course from Steven? It's not the same. No, what I wanted to do though was show you a lot of the same concepts. So inside of that course, we will use Airtable. We will use serverless functions. We'll use environment variables. We'll use React Router DOM. So many things that there's a lot of overlap. So it's not the exact same thing, but the technologies and things behind it are very similar. So that's the way that I'm approaching this. Actually, I feel like this is not a great example of like setting up React Router DOM configure. And this is the reason that I had wanted to set up this kind of stuff by myself, or like a blog post on this, because I feel like it could be a lot simpler. Oh, the one thing we need to do, we forgot, is actually wrap those routes inside of a switch. So when we have these inside of a switch, and that should actually be capitalized. it's going to choose just one of these routes if I've got it set up correctly. And so what we'll also do is throw in the navbar in here. So let's import the navbar. And so what this is saying is the navbar will be on every page. And then based on which route we're on, we will show the specific component that we want to show. And let's look at this. I think this might be, is that because that is lowercase? I think it is. And then I want to uppercase that and that. And as navbar, I'm going to go ahead and change the file name of this to rename and navbar and overwrite. Cool. Hopefully that will be good. I forgot to address, CodeStacker had one question before, and it was in the image gallery, which was causing us some React issues of inside of the use effect. You're supposed to be able to define what your dependency array is. And basically what this means is if the things inside of this array change, call this function, which then calls load images. And I only wanted that to happen once, which means you can pass it an empty array. And then it also has a dependency of the set images function, which won't change, but we can kind of throw it in as a dependency. So the error that I was having is it looked like that thing was just completely re-rendering the whole time. The actual problem was inside of the image component, it uses React use effect, and it had some dependencies marked in there, and that was boilerplate code that I had copied. And that was causing itself to just continue to re-render. So that thing is fixed. We don't have to worry about that. And what I did was add this comment here to disable this ESLint rule that if you see now will show me I need to include these things. And if I save, it'll auto format to add them. That's not what I want. So adding this comment here will tell it to ignore that and let me do the empty array, which then solves our rendering problem. So it only renders once, if that makes sense. All right, let's start this up again. See if I've got this navbar or the app.js configured correctly. And yeah, CodeStacker, let me know. Hopefully that addressed that issue we were having last week. It was really shitty real time because it was not something I wanted to spend a lot of time debugging and ended up being kind of a pain. So let's see, navbar.js. Okay, so I think I need to update that name there. And does that work? Maybe. Looks close. Okay, cool. So here's our H1 and our stuff. And then if we go to the profile page and get our profile page, hopefully this will load profile. So that's where we're going to update stuff. So one of the things that we can do is start to use some of the Bootstrap stuff. And inside of our app, we can surround all of our content with a container class. So this will give us the padding and stuff that we need and center this stuff. Maybe, did we not do the navbar too? No, let's put the navbar in there as well. I think like that. And hopefully now that stuff is centered. Okay, and we've got some margin at the top that we should probably add, and we can kind of do this by margin T. I think you can do 5 with Bootstrap. That will add a margin of 5 rem, maybe. I think that's probably what they do. Let's actually look at that. Let's grab the container. So actually MT5 is 3 margin top of 3 rem. So these are just the Bootstrap utility classes that you get. And we can start to make this look maybe a little bit more like a navbar. So let's grab actually Bootstrap. I'm just going to copy Bootstrap for navbar. And there it is. And let's see what a basic navbar looks like. We don't actually need anything that fancy. Maybe we can start. Do they have a nav ran up here as well? Yeah. So I'm going to copy this whole thing. That's going to be a lot. And then we'll just kind of rip out the stuff that we don't want. So inside of our navbar, I'm going to put this down here. And it's got so much stuff in it that we don't need. I don't know why div has no corresponding closing tag. Wonder if I didn't copy all of that navbar maybe. It should have copied. It looks like maybe I didn't copy. All right, let's start a little bit simpler. Let's go down and let's grab our nav with a heading. So let's do this. Let's just put this in there. And does that work? Hopefully so. And we want this to be, our brand is dev setups. And then let's just see what a couple of links look like. So we'll see some links in here where we have a navbar collapse. So let's put this thing inside of there. And so this will go below our nav brand. So then we'll have this stuff. And we're only going to have, I think, just 2 links. So let's get rid of one and a second one. So we've got 2 left. And let's just look. This is not going to look very great now. But you see dev setups here, and then we need to fill in the actual... Oh, I think class needs to be converted to class name. So let's search for class equals. This is one of my favorite tricks in VS Code. And just change that to class name. So anytime you see class, change that to class name. And now, let's see. We still get our dev setups there, but we don't have any of... It's not showing anything for our nav items, and it looks... Well, I'm not actually sure why that's not showing up. So here's our home. Navbar nav. Let's just start with one of these. And that is not showing our home page. Anybody in the chat there able to help me out? Let's see if I can find a more... I mean, that should be a pretty simple one. So grabbing the navbar nav here and then pasting in just a few nav items. I don't know why that's not working there. Streaming is fun. Let's look at this nav. Is it getting the right classes? That looks right. And this thing here. Got the nav. It may be the collapse part. I may not need the collapse because I don't know. I'm not actually importing the JavaScript for this, which is something I can do later. So maybe I need to get rid of that without the JavaScript. H is find and replace in VS Code. Mine, I set it up to Command H to do the find and replace. Yeah. And that's really helpful. So I think that was because I'm not loading the JavaScript. So that's what was going wrong. So you see my home is over here, which is good. So I'm going to change this. And these are no longer going to be LI elements because what's going to happen is an LI element is going to like do a full refresh. We actually want to do like client side routing. So in this case, we'll change this to a link, and I'm going to auto import this from React Router DOM. And actually, sorry, wrong. This part is going to be a link. So let's get the auto import, update that. And then this will be a to property instead of an href or the hashtag. Yeah, the href. So now let's get back to our app, and we'll click home, and this should go back home. And then we'll have another one. So we'll just copy and paste this, and we'll have a profile page. And now this one, we only want to show if the user is logged in. So let's do a conditional here, is authenticated. So if the user is authenticated, then let's show them that one. And then if they're authenticated, let's also show a log out. And so this will go, this actually won't go to log out. This will actually call a function, but that's okay. So that there will be that one. And then since we're showing multiple things inside of a conditional display, we need to wrap those with some sort of wrapper. So we'll wrap it with just an empty tag. React will basically strip that out. But basically what that allows us to do is define 2 different elements inside of a parenthesis, because usually in React, you can only render one thing. You can have multiple inside of that, but you can only render one thing by itself. So if the user is logged in, we'll give them the log out button. And then if they are not logged in, so if they're not logged in, then let's get us another element here. So we'll grab one of these. And then let's say this one is going to be log in. All right, let's see if that just looks right. We don't want that to be stacked. Wonder, was there a property in that nav? UL navbar nav item active. I just want like the basic. I don't need. Navbar collapse. See, all of these are using the collapse stuff, which I don't have. Maybe I just need to include the JavaScript. I don't know. Let's look at React Bootstrap. We actually, so in the course, for what it's worth, we do all of our own CSS. So I don't actually use Bootstrap. I just thought this would be easier to use to get started. And built from scratch. So this is using like components instead of class libraries. I might skip that for now. Not really the most important part here. So eventually I'll have this kind of look more like we would expect, where it's going to be something horizontal. And Coriano's saying flex property. Is that applying flex to the nav? So nav bar nav. It is a display of flex. I don't know why. Flex direction. Usually it's row by default. I'm not sure why. Where is it getting the flex direction to not be? Oh, there it is. Flex direction of column. I don't know. I'm not sure why it doesn't do that by default. Let's see. Does it use flex in here? No, not really. It mentions flex. Navbar for full height and lightweight navigation. Navbar toggler. Navbar text. Navbar collapse. Anyway, I'll leave it for now. If someone knows like exactly how to change that, let me know. One of the things I might want to do though is change one of these buttons in here. So like this one. Let's add inside of an LI. So let's replace one of our login or log out buttons. So inside of here, instead of having a link, we'll have a button, and it'll be type of submit. It's not actually going to be a form, so we don't need that, although it's okay. And this one will be log out. So we'll have that button instead of a link. Let's just see what that looks like. And there's log out. It doesn't have to be green. Actually, let's do just like a button primary probably. If you've done any Bootstrap stuff, you probably recognize those classes. So there's our log out button. And on click, we want to call the log out function. That comes from auth0. And then we'll do the same thing basically for our log in button. So inside of here, instead of a link, we'll have the button. And this will be log in with redirect and log in. All right, so just kind of setting up this boilerplate stuff here. Load this up. We're logged in. We can log out by clicking that button. And then you see we're logged out, and then we can log back in. And I've got this configured for us to log in with Twitter. So I'm not going too deep into the auth0 side of this for setting up all of that stuff. I think it is really interesting. That is actually in, like you'll do, not Twitter, but username and password sign up in auth0 and all the security stuff that comes with it in the course if you're interested in that later on. And it looks like Coriano is trying, let's see, under our navbar, can we apply classes of, let's see, dflex and flex row? Yeah, which sucks because the only thing I don't think we need dflex. I think we just need flex row. And then I'll have to go back and add like some styling. So let's go to our navbar nav and say flex row. And obviously we need to add some spacing in here, but that's probably okay for now. And then we can get rid of that top part of the welcome. And so where it's this part up here. Actually, I might want to save part of that. So let's grab maybe this one and just put it down here maybe. Let's see. Outside of our is authenticated. Let's just add it after the UL. So this is just going to display their username. It doesn't look great right now, so I don't have to show that. What I would probably do is do a drop down. So I can add that later on with adding the JavaScript, but for now, just going to comment this out. And now we have the ability for the user to like be on the home page or go to the profile, and this is where they will update their own image. So one of the things that I probably want to do is inside of the profile page, I probably want to do two things. I want to get user's profile pic if it exists. And then also I want to display that picture so the user can see what they've already got, and then be able to upload it or update it with that upload functionality. So what we want to do, let's actually create another serverless function. So I think this will be a good practice, and it's get user image, and we can call exports.handler to define this function. And we'll pass in, or this will have a parameter of the event, and then we'll go from here. So now in this webinar, we're creating our first serverless function, and it's going to interact with Airtable. And if we look at the Airtable helper here, it does all the configuration for Airtable and then exports that table that we want to use. So what we'll do is we will get that table, and we get that by requiring that utils file. So utils/Airtable. And then now we basically want to do a query using that table. So we can do a table.query. I want to probably double check this, and then this will be a good reference for you as well. The Airtable API docs are really good. Shows you how to use this JavaScript library, the package that we're using. And if you look inside of here under retrieve or list records, we can call using our table select and then pass it some things that we want to select based on. So let's do a select, and then if you pass it an empty object, it will grab all of them, and then we can call first page, which will give, if it's doing like pagination, it will give us like the first page of the pagination, if that makes sense. Another thing that we can do is we can set max records. So in here, inside of the select, I only want to get back one record. Now, hopefully there's only one record for a user anyway, but we can pass in one record, and then we can pass in the, what is it called? The formula, let's see. The formula, if we spell it correctly, the filter by formula. So this is another configuration thing that we can pass with our query, and we'll pass in a string. And to me, this is one thing that the documentation doesn't do that good at. But what we want to do is pass in, we'll start with a username of James Q Quick, something like that. And what I want to get back here is the record where the handle property, if you look inside of our table, this handle or username property, sorry, I want to get back the record that's associated with that username. So where that property, the username is the username that we pass in. So it will look something like this. And I'm going to use template literal strings. Let me know if you're not familiar with those and I can explain them. But we're basically creating a query here where we only want to get one record, and we only want to get records where the username property of that record equals the username that we pass in, which in this case is hard-coded to James Q Quick. Okay, so something could go wrong in this. So good practice is to surround this with a try catch. If there's an error, we will console error the error. And then the way we do returns is we return an object that has a status code, in this case of 500. and then a body of a JSON stringified object with an error message of something went wrong. Not being too specific here. But if something does go wrong, we return back a status of 500 internal server, and then a message, error message that says something went wrong. And then in serverless functions, you have to stringify that object to be able to return JSON back to the caller. And I always mess up these formulas, so we'll see if this works the first time. But since this function is created, we should be able to test this out by coming to localhost 34567 / Netlify functions, and then what did we call it? Get user image. Get user image. Says function not found. I think once you add one of these brand new, you need to restart your Netlify dev so that it knows it's there. All right, as we're moving along here, give me a check-in in the chat. Let me know you're still here if you're following along, and if you have any questions, because these are pretty fast-moving webinars, I would say. So I definitely want to address questions if you have them, so throw them in the chat. And I'm going to test this function out. Looks like didn't work for some reason. Okay. And it's saying invalid filter by formula. So, and I always mess this up. I think maybe this username is supposed to be surrounded in quotes. That might be it. So that is, those functions are up and running. Again, CodeStacker is always the best at checking in. I appreciate that. Boogie Bum, thanks for checking in as well. Let me know, everyone else, if you're checking in and still with me too. Looks like that timed out. I don't really know why. Oh, and one of the, we didn't return anything. That's why. What we need to do is, since we're using basically calling something that returns a promise, we want to make sure that we await that promise instead of, I'm using async await instead of .then and catch. And then to use await, you have to mark the function as async. So we're marking the function as async. We are doing this query. And then what I want to return back is, if this worked, a status code of 200, and then a body of JSON stringify. And then the thing I want to send back is the record for the user. So then we'll just return back this record. Coriano's here, JC's here, loving this quick rundown on using Netlify functions. These things are amazing. I can't overstate that enough. Just to get started with this and have the easiest way of hosting a full stack app is crazy, super cool. So let's try this again. Let's refresh. And now we're coming back with a record, which is great. So that's what we want. One of the things that I usually do is strip out all of this data. So I don't want all of it. I really just care about the fields and the ID. And I haven't done this yet, but inside of Airtable, one of the things that I can do is, let's say, what should this function be called? Get thinned out record or get minimal record. Let's call it thinned out. This is just kind of an interesting naming here. Get thinned out record. So we'll pass it the full record. And then what we want to return back is an object, if I do this correctly. So we'll pass or return back an object where it's going to have an ID property that has record.id. And then I want to take each one of these fields and throw it in the object as well. So my goal is to get rid of all the rest of this information that I don't really need. And I'll do that by doing the spread operator on record.field. So that's going to take every property out of record.fields, throw it into this new object, and then return it. And then we'll make sure to export this thing. And Coriano is asking, could you use E instead of the word event to check for an event object? Yes, absolutely. This is whatever you want to name this thing is actually what you get. So you can name that parameter whatever you want. Just know the order is event, context, and callback. And I'm using async on this function, so I never use the callback. If you don't mark this function as async, you have to call the callback to signify that you're done with the function. It took me a long time to learn that, actually. And the explanations weren't very clear or obvious. So anyway, for what it's worth. All right, so from here, I want to get the min minified record. Maybe that will be a good name. Let's change it to that. So get minified record, and get minified record. And again, all I'm doing here is just stripping out some of the unnecessary information. So we'll call get minified record. We also need to import that thing up here from the Airtable utils. And I'm using a utils file just so I can reuse this code, right? I can have it in a central place and then reuse it throughout my application. So there's the minified record, and then let's pass back the minified record. So now hopefully if we refresh this function, we should get the same data that we care about, although it looks like we didn't do it well. And what are we doing wrong? We're calling the get minified record and passing in that record. And then inside of Airtable, we return back an object with the record and the record.fields. The ID, let's see, what are we doing here? Let's log out this record and double check that I had those properties correct. So let's refresh this thing here. And it does have the fields property, and it does have the ID property. I'm not sure why that's not coming back. We did this actually inside of functions and get images. We did something similar to this where we did a map. So we took each record and then we returned back the same kind of thing here. The object with the ID and the fields. Was that any different? I think just formatting. Let's see here. And that's still stripping that out. I wonder what's going on. I wonder if maybe our response is sending back the minified record console. Let's log that thing just to see. Is that actually coming back as nothing? ID is undefined. So I'm passing in, wow, what is going on? Passing in this record to this function, which is up there. And inside of that function, I get, let's log the record out there. Record.id. Oh, these are records. That's why. So even though I put a limit on this thing, what it's actually returning back is a list of records. So this would be record. And then I want to get the one record, hopefully that's in there, and pass that to the get minified record. And first, actually, if the records.length is 0, that means we know the user doesn't have one. So we can return back a status code to say, hey, that's okay. You don't have to have one. So a status code and then a body of JSON stringify. And then we'll create an object in here. And this can say, I mean, it could be whatever we want. Yeah, records, Coriano caught it. Yeah. Thanks for... or caught one of those updates of using records here. So if we get this back, we'll just say doesn't have a picture yet, which is totally fine. And then we'll grab that thing, and actually maybe yeah, that's fine. We'll grab that record and get the minified record, and then hopefully after all of that, we'll be able to see the minified record in here. So there we go. So what we'll get back is the ID, the username, and the image ID. So the one thing we're not taking into account here is that we want to not hard code this username, but get it from maybe a query parameter. So maybe we can do something like username equals James Q Quick. And I always have to check this, but I think let's log out console log event.params. I think that's where we're going to get that property. And so let's log it out, and then let's stop logging out this minified record. And params, I think, will have all of our query params that we care about. So if we look back, we get, where's that thing? Undefined here. So maybe it's not. Let's look this up. And where else am I logging out that record? Right here. All right, so let's look at serverless function query parameters. You can see I've looked at some of these before on how to do it. And actually, that's getting into some things that are a little bit more specific for AWS stuff. So yeah, this is the kind of thing that I feel like that's an easy thing to ask for. Is just like, where do I get query params? And it's not that well documented. Let's log out the entire event, and I should be able to tell from there where those are, because I just forget what the actual name is. It's going to give us a big long object here. Query string parameters. That's what it is. Yep. So let's log that out. And I think what this will have basically is we'll just grab. So let's do a check if there are no event.query string parameters. Or actually, let's check if there is no username parameter. So that thing is an object. We're just grabbing the property or the value associated with username. And let's initialize a username up here. So we'll just have that be username there. And let's get rid of this hard-coded one. And then we'll say if there is no username property, we want to return, and we can do a status code of a 400 bad request, and do a body JSON stringify, not that one, stringify. My IntelliSense is wonky. Of a thing that has an error message to say, who are you looking for? Something like that. And then we'll grab the username. So let's grab, and actually maybe what we can do by default is just put all of this to the username variable, and then say if there is no username, then throw that error. So what should happen is let's run this query, which has username as James Q Quick. That should work in theory, just like it did before. Let's get rid of this, and we should get an error. Who are you looking for? And then also we can do username of CodeStacker is in here. So now we should get CodeStacker, but it says CodeStacker doesn't have an image. Is that the username? Maybe it's because it's not, maybe it's case sensitive. Maybe that's why. So stacker, CodeStack, capital stack, CodeStacker. Cool, case sensitive. So now we've defined a serverless function that can get a specific record for a user. Then in React, now we want to use this thing. So we've got this endpoint. Inside of our profile page, we'll use a React hook called useEffect. And with useEffect, we'll call it this way. We'll give it a callback function. And then we'll give it a dependency array of nothing. This means that the thing inside of here, we only want to run once. So that's the way that works. And accepts a function that contains, oh, that's because this thing is lowercase again. Anyway, so inside of our useEffect, we want to make a request to our serverless function. And we've done something similar to this inside of the gallery. And we defined a load images function. I'm actually going to copy and paste that and bring it down here. And this will be load user image. And we'll get, let's see, we'll call not the get images, but we'll call get user image. And then we also want to tack on, if you remember, that query parameter for the username. So then we'll add username equals, and now where do we get that username from? Well, this profile page will have access to, just like in the navbar, all the stuff that comes back from Auth0, including the actual user object. So I'm going to copy and paste this over here. And let's import use Auth0. And I think like this use Auth0 hook is really cool because it gives us really quick access to all the things that we care about. And what we're going to say is we just want to import the user itself. All right, so we'll get the user. And then similar to how we did before, we're going to want to get the username out of there. So let's start by logging out this user object just to see what it is. And inside of the use effect, we will call our load user image. All right, and it's going to, we need to grab that username, so we'll do that in a second. And then we'll say set user image. Actually, let's forget that for now. Let's log out the data. All right, we got a question in here from Local Deep. Why would you use fetch in React? What else would you use? There are lots of options. You could install Axios if you wanted to. That's an additional library that you have to install. I prefer to just use fetch because it's built into JavaScript. So I don't have to install anything else. I can just use it directly, not have to worry about additional packages or anything like that. So that's why I personally use fetch. I'm curious if you have opinions on what would you use. If you use something else, let me know in the chat. All right, so when this component loads, first I want to see the actual user, and then we'll make a call to the load user image endpoint. Do we still have? Yeah, okay, I think we're good. So let's go back to our page and look in the console here and rerun this profile page. We'll see what that does. Looks like we've got a misnomer on class equals. I don't see that in here. Maybe it's in the navbar. Class equals. Yeah, there we go. So that should be class name. And do I have any more? Yes, just one more. So I'll just update that there. And the request module, I've never really honestly used request myself. I know a lot of people use request in Node, but to me, there's no reason to install an additional package in request if you have fetch already there for you. So yeah, that's why I use fetch. I also, if I'm in Node, I'll either like get a polyfill for fetch so I can use that basically in the same way, or I'll just use Axios. So that's what I do. It's just my personal opinion. And if you see, it made that request to the API and it came back with who are you looking for because we didn't pass it the right thing. And what we want to get is the user's handle. Now, unfortunately, this information is a little mucked up where this thing right here is the key for the handle. It's not great, but that's what it is. And there's some details about why, which I don't think we care about right now. The main thing is we just want to get the user's username. So we'll say const username equals user of that string. And then using ES6 template literals, and again, let me know if you haven't used these before, we're basically able to interpolate variables inside of the string. So we'll pass in the username property. All right, and now, what is this yelling at us for now? It's going to talk about some dependencies of use effect. And honestly, I don't care about that right now. I don't think that'll actually lead to an issue, except for the fact that we're trying to call that function before. Yeah, that's going to be an issue. So we're trying to call the function before we define it. So let's grab this use effect and just bring it down to below that function definition. And you get into React's hooks can actually be a little bit tricky and complicated with all the implications of, let's see, what am I trying to say? Of re-rendering and things. So it can be really tricky. You see that warning. I'm not too worried about it right this second. But I'm able to get my profile back, which is great. And then now with that, what I want to do is display that. So let's grab the use state. So let's say use state, get a snippet here. And this is the profile pic ID maybe. And we'll set that to null to start. And then make sure that we import use state up here. Use state. All right, and I want to set that property. So with this data, I want to set profile pic ID to be the data dot, and what is it? The image ID. So IMG ID. And then down here in the bottom on the profile page, let's look at adding if there is an image or profile pic ID. If that thing exists, now let's use our image component that is created, or we created last time. And this is the one that uses Cloudinary. And for that, we can pass in a couple of things, cloud name and public ID. And we can do that right now. So cloud name equals James Q Quick. And then the public ID equals the profile pic ID. So now we should be able to say if this thing is here. Let's say, let's maybe in H3, here's your existing picture. And otherwise, so I'm going to copy this and say if there is no profile pic ID, then I want to say you should upload an image. All right, hopefully that makes sense. A couple of additional comments. Coriano says, why are you using brackets instead of curly brackets on the username variable to get the value? Let's see where you're talking about. So are you talking about getting the username from the user object? If you are, think of the user thing here is an object. And the way you get a value out of a user, or excuse me, out of an object is by specifying in the key. So this looks like overly complicated because we have this like long key, but just think of it as being something like this, or it would be the equivalent of doing this. So just getting a property out of an object. So hopefully that is what you're asking and explains that for you. And then Local Deep says, request is better by handling response and doesn't, I don't know what doesn't any promise means. Yeah, so doesn't use promise. So that's totally fine. If that's what you want to do, that's totally up to you. You asked me what I do, so I use fetch and why, and that's why, just because it's built in. And I'm just kind of used to working with it. So you can do whichever of those you want to. Totally fine. All right, what should happen, hopefully now, is we load this and it says, hey, here's your existing picture. So that's cool. So we're able to see our profile picture here. And I think, let me look in the gallery, we can use some really cool aspects of Cloudinary to pass in some transforms where we can make sure that this thing is only a width of 300 and then have Cloudinary scale that thing for us. So now it's basically going to change the URL that gets sent to Cloudinary to get the image. And based on that, basically like query parameters inside of that string, the transform, now we're able to get a smaller image. So we don't want to get these huge images. We just need to kind of show, here's a simple one. JC is asking a great question. What are the empty brackets for? So inside of, anytime you render a React component, you can only render one thing. So if you look inside of this part, we've got a div and then everything else falls inside of the div. We can't then return a paragraph tag after the div, for example. So what you return in React in a render can only be one element, and you can have a bunch of things inside of that element. So in this example, where I want to display two things, an H3 and an image, I have to surround it with something. So they won't let me do this because I can only return one parent element. So I have to wrap it with something. I could wrap it with a div, and that would be more or less totally fine. So let's actually look at what that looks like. I think this will, what did I do wrong? Let's see, div, that thing goes on the front. So if we look at this, this is going to surround this whole thing with a div. So this div right here, and we may not want that. So the difference is if you just use the empty brackets, React will basically strip out that element so that I'm not adding additional divs for no reason. So now if we look, you'll see that this stuff is not wrapped inside of a div. By using those empty angle brackets, it's just going to basically give us an empty element that React will then strip out in the DOM, and we don't have to waste additional divs. Marat Kaplan is in the chat. Hey, Marat, what's going on? Thanks for coming and hanging out. Anybody else that's new to the chat, if you are, and you're watching in Podia, and you missed kind of the explanation of that, make sure you click on the YouTube button so you can come over here and chat with us as we go along through here. All right, so Boogie Bum's got to run. Yeah, thanks for coming and hanging out. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, I'll catch you later. So inside of here, we are able to see the user's existing picture. That's really cool. And what we want to happen is the ability for the user to update their picture. And so what needs to happen is in the upload function, we need to get the user's username, which we already have actually. So if there is a record that already exists with that username, then we want to update that record instead of creating a new one, if that makes sense. So let's go back to our get user image. And this functionality is actually something we want to repeat. So this stuff in CodeStacker's got to go. Yeah, no worries. Thanks for hanging out, CodeStacker. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day as well. And basically all of this logic, oh, excuse me, sorry about that, is what we want to do, what we basically want to repeat. So we could put this inside of our Airtable, and we could have a function in here, const get image for user. And we'll paste in this stuff. This will be an async function. We'll pass in the username to it, and we'll do something. We can actually check this thing as well. So if actually that'll be fine. So if records comes back as yeah, that'll totally be fine. So we're saving ourselves a little bit of stuff here. Actually, we can go ahead and pull this logic into there. So let's grab all of this stuff. So all of this that we want, let's go and put it inside of here. And if records comes back with nothing in it, let's just return null. And then otherwise, let's return the minified version of the first record in there. So all of that logic, we're going to reuse this. And so we'll have that function get image for user. We will put this in an export. And this maybe, JC, if you're still hanging out and listening, this is how I start to kind of break out my code and reuse it by putting it in these util files. This is a good example of if we're going to do the same logic in two places, let's put it in one so that we can reuse it. So we'll grab the record by the user. If there are no records that come back, we'll return null. And then the get minified record here, that will return the actual minified record that we care about. So let's grab, let's get rid of all of this. And let's say record or minified record equals, not get minified record, but what did we want to call it? Get image for user. Get image for user, passing in the username. And we want to await this and go ahead and import it above from Airtable. All right, so we'll import this thing. Here's our minified record. And we'll say if, actually, let's just make this a little bit simpler. This will return an empty object. So if there's nothing that comes back, we'll just return this this empty object, which means we need to do a little bit of testing on the front end. So on the profile page, when we get back this data, we want to make sure we want to make sure we only set the profile pic ID if there actually is one. So let's say, actually we could do a little shorthand here, data.image ID and I don't know if people are used to this shortcut here, But what this is saying is if there is an image ID property on this piece of data, which if there wasn't a record, it would come back empty, then let's go ahead and call this set profile pic using that property. Otherwise, if there's not, it won't do the second part because an and functionality will short circuit if the first thing is false, right? Because both have to be true for it to exist. So let's save that and let's come back to our get user image. And so we're doing something like this. And we want to do something similar inside of our upload image. So upload function. And we've got the username. We want to first start by looking to see if the record already exists. So if the record already exists, we will update it. So let's import this thing from Airtable. And let me know in the chat, people that are still hanging out and following, let me know if you're still there. And did we not get you image for users not defined? Didn't we just paste that in? Not here, but get image for user. All right, so when someone tries to submit a record, what we'll do is we will check to see if they, and I'm going to update this to existing. This is something naming convention I use a lot. So if there is an existing record, we want to update, else we create. So where do we use this create down here? So it looks like right here. So we will, let's see here. Let's grab this public ID and bring it up here. And we'll get the existing image if there is one. If there is, we'll update. If there's not, then we'll just call our create like so. All right. And if it is an update, now we need to call, Coriana's still here, great. We'll call our await table dot, and now I'm gonna go and double check the doc. So let's look at the update, and there's a couple of different ways to do updates. You can do kind of a safe update, or you can do a replace. Let's see what the other one is called. A replace performs a destructive update. So a replace will completely replace the object regardless of what properties there are. An update will only update the records, the parts that we specify. So what that means is we will call table.update and pass in the existing record, but we want to augment that existing record to have to set the image ID to the new image ID that we just created. So the public ID. And then we will call update on that existing record. Okay, recap here of what we're doing. When a user goes to upload an image, we want to add that image to Cloudinary. Then we want to grab the existing record in Airtable for that user if there is one. So if there is an existing record, let's take that record, let's update the image ID property, and let's call update. So we'll add the new public ID, and then we will update that property in the database. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and create this thing like we've been doing anyway. So let's see. I want to return in here I'm going to call this created record. Call that created record there. And then in this one, actually, let's just return the same type of thing. So if we do a create, let's return the one that we just, or the update, let's return the one that we just updated, which is the existing record. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, that was kind of a lot. Let's see if this works. So let's start with looking inside of Airtable. And you see for me, I've got an ID of EWQ something, all right? And then let's try to, inside of here, let's try to choose another file. So let's grab maybe the promotional image for the stream. Let's load that image. Now let's upload it. And let's see, did that go okay? Maybe not. Let's see. Actually, it crashed. So let's figure out what went wrong. And inside of here, we got done is not a function. What did we break? Well, we broke something. And it does it give us an exact line? In Airtable, it broke. Malik, what's up? With the lightning bolt, I like it. Throwing an exception. Where are we not covering ourselves from exceptions? So we're surrounding all of this stuff with a try catch, which means we should be able to catch anything, but we're not logging it. So let's log out the error if we see it. And actually this will probably, that error is probably in the network tab. So if we look at this and look at the response, no, actually didn't show us, so that's okay. Let's try to run this again and just see what's going on. And this is why, like, as you write code, stuff can break very easily. So you want to make sure that you're using try catches and handling as best you can scenarios where stuff could go wrong. Ilmukita, hello, what's up? Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Let's try and run this again, and we should actually just be able to call this, or maybe not. Maybe I broke it there. Let's see. All right, let's choose a new file. So we'll use this promotional image, and then we'll try to upload, which failed. Let's see if, did we get a log in here? Not really. Okay, so maybe inside of our Airtable function, we're doing this query in here, and we're not surrounding that with a try catch. But when we actually use that in here, that's surrounded with a try catch. I'm not sure where we're not handling our errors. So, I mean, like, this is kind of the hacky debugging. I can just throw in a few console logs here. And let's try it again. And if anybody, take a look to see if anybody can see anything that is obviously wrong for you, let me know. But let's try it again. I think we just call upload here again, which failed and is crashing our server. And so we're getting the public, we're getting the username, fine. Then we're getting the public ID. Are we getting the existing record? And inside of there, everything should still be handled with a try catch. Yeah, huh. Let's do console log of the updated existing record, and then inside of here, let's log out the created record. Let's see what we get here in a second. All right, let's call upload again. I'm sure it will fail. What did we get? So we got back, what in the world? Created record. We got back the updated record. Maybe not. Update. I'm thinking I think this is not exactly how the update works. Let's check that in the API docs. So when we call update, you need to pass an array of objects that you're updating, I think, yeah. So let's call update and then pass in the existing record. But I don't know why, not sure why that would have caused an issue. So let's do our Netlify dev. Let's start this up again. New subscriber. I don't know if a subscriber is in the chat or not. If you are, thank you. And let's try to send this thing again. Does that still break? Yep, it still breaks. You must provide an array, each with an ID field. And okay, so looks like we get our existing record. Oh, because we changed the structure of these records. If you remember, we minified and changed the structure of our records, which is not the format that it needs to go back to Airtable. So let's do, maybe we'll split. What's the best way to do this? Let's go back to our Airtable helper. So there's get image for user. So let's not do the minified version of this, and then let's specifically, when we call the get user image, let's call the get minified record. Let's go ahead and convert that thing here specifically. So here we'll convert it specifically or manually, or decide to call it, and then in the other one we won't. So with that updated, hopefully, let's choose the file again. There we go. And another subscriber here. Don't know if they're in the chat or not. That returned back with, let's see what that object looked like. So there's the ID and the fields, which looks right. And then you must provide an array of up to 10 objects, each with an ID field and a fields object for values. So somehow that's not getting right in here. But I mean, that object has fields and it has the ID property. So I'm not sure where we're going wrong there. Let's come back to the upload. And there's the existing record. If there is an existing record, set the fields.imageID to the public ID. And then we're passing that in as an array, which I think is what we're supposed to do. Let's try that again. And I wonder if these uploads in Cloudinary are happening every time. I think they are, actually. Did that not work? Choose this image. There we go. Let's upload. Must provide an array. That should be an array with one record in it. So let me log out the record here. .fields.imageID. Let's see what that looks like. We should just be changing that one property. I don't know why that doesn't seem to want to display. Why is that not displaying my image? I'm going to refresh this page just in case. All right, there that is. Upload. Still didn't like it. But that. So there is. Huh. And does it have, I wonder if this has the fields, image ID. It's got the new image ID, and I bet if we look inside of Cloudinary, we've been uploading a lot of images here. Let's see. Which is okay. I can go and delete these later, but we'll have a lot of probably that same image. That's okay. Let's go back. And do we need to pass in the 0 index? Well, our goal, or what we're supposed to do, is pass into this call. We pass an array of objects. And so that's why I'm taking the existing record and I'm basically putting it into an array. So this should be an array of just one item. Const update records equals existing record. And then pass that thing into there, maybe. Update records. But I also want to get a look update records. I also want to get a look at this thing to make sure that it actually is an array. And it's supposed to have a property of both ID and fields, which as far as I can tell, it both has. All right, let's try again. I don't know. Upload. I'm sure that will fail. Fail. Inside of here, we've got an array, and then we've got an object, which has a property of fields and an ID. Huh. You must provide an array of up to 10 record objects, each with an ID, field, and a fields object for cell values. Wow, I am confused because I think that's what I'm doing. And there's their example there. Maybe it's because it has other stuff too. I can't imagine that would be, like, that would seem wild if that was the problem. You must provide an array, each with an ID field. Maybe it's because I've got more information than they do. So, let's try this. Let's say, and actually this is gonna kind of, I don't know. Let's call this min record, and let's say this is gonna be ID of existing record.id. And fields is going to be existing record.fields. I really wouldn't imagine that's what the issue is. And actually, we should move this inside of here. So let's take our min record and let's update its property. And then let's add that to an array and then update those. All right, fingers crossed. We'll get something to work here. Let's come back to the app. Let's choose a file. And upload. It took longer. That looked like it might have worked. And then now, hopefully, here's the test. Let's refresh the page. Do we see a different image? Yay, it worked. So now we're able to update that thing. We also have a million different files in inside of Cloudinary for the same type of thing. I'm going to try to delete all of these. Got a lot of cleanup stuff to do in here. Where's my, yeah, let's delete all 8 of those. Okay, so that at least we're able to update a record. And I'm kind of thinking, like, I'm duplicating, where am I trying to go? Back here. We're duplicating, showing, like, here's the new image. I think we're just kind of duplicating this work. So I think what we can do is maybe, let's just show the existing picture as part of this form up here. So we'll start off with that form showing the existing picture by default. So let's see how we can do that. Let's get rid of all of these extra logs in here. I think that's okay. Yeah, JC and Coriano, I'm definitely celebrating on my end as well. And let's come back to the, not Airtable, the profile page. On the profile page, we're deciding what that picture ID is. And let's look at our upload component. And the upload, we're trying to get a data URL, which I guess this is a different thing. So maybe what we really want is to show an existing image if it already exists. If that makes sense. I might have to think through how we actually want to do this. But basically, I'm just trying to show, like, we don't need to show 2 different images. We just need to show either the one that's already there or that the one that the user is trying to upload. So we can figure that out later on. One thing we might want to do also, though, is in the upload, when this finishes, so when the user has actually uploaded the image, let's call a function called image uploaded. And this is so that any parent components that want to know about this change can know. So we'll say this is going to be a prop that gets passed in. And then in our profile, we'll pass in this prop to the, where is it? The upload. And then we'll define our own function here. So const image uploaded. And then what we want to do here, actually, we don't have to do that. We could actually just call load user image. So we've already got that function defined, load user image. And what I want to see is, what did we mess up? Use callback is not defined. I did not do that, or at least I didn't mean to. I think it's okay if we do actually, but use callback. And does that have an empty array for user? Sure. All right, so what I want to see is, let's load the image first. Let's choose a new one, which in this case, we'll give a, oh, I guess these are all the same. Let's use this one. And if I upload this, hopefully now it'll go and retrieve the newer one. Or maybe not, it didn't do it. Let's see, was there anything console-wise in here? Target cannot set property value null. I think that was part of is that something in here? I'm not sure why that's an issue now, but I thought we would trigger this image uploaded. And so we pass that down as a property to the upload. So image uploaded and then load user image, which is right there. I don't think, let's just get rid of this use callback. I don't actually feel like I need that, but we will mark it as async. And let's get rid of this stuff. And it's filling that stuff up for me, which is fine. But I feel like I really wish it wouldn't do that, to be honest. There's a lot of the tricky stuff about React hooks is, again, the like callbacks and hooks and different things. But anyway, Method Man Redman fan, what's up? Thanks for coming to hang out for a little bit. Just kind of hacking away on this project. But I wonder if it's even calling console log loading image. So let's just see when this thing is actually being loaded. So it should do it here. And then if I choose a file, which I can go back, I'm just going to toggle between these and upload. Is it going to trigger that loading image again? And it says something about cannot set property value of null at submit handler. If you're using this, you're accessing this property. So this inside of upload, the e.target.value equals null. I think event.persist. We can just say we can do this first maybe before anything else changes. And let's try this again. So now let's go back to this other one. Upload. And it says that it was loading an image again, but it doesn't appear to have changed it out. So we can come back to that. Method Man Redman fan says, why don't you use TypeScript? It's awesome with React. I've kind of tried it, and honestly, well, one, I don't work on like super high quality enterprise code. So if I was working on like a bigger project and had other people involved, I would be more inclined to do it. I just don't feel like I need it, honestly, at this point with React. So yeah, I don't use it myself. I know lots of people do and lots of people love it, so that's totally fine, obviously. But yeah, I don't feel like I need it myself. So it should be calling that function, which inside of here says loading image. Let's just see, does it come back with data? Choose file. Let's do this one. Upload. Is that what we wanted to see? So going from, no, I don't think it is. It kept that same one. I don't know why that's not swapping out. Yeah, I don't know why that's not not swapping out. Yeah, sure. Happy to respond to that. Are you a TypeScript user yourself, Method Man Redman, or looks like Zerify, if that's how you say it, is in the chat as well? Are either one of you using TypeScript? I'd love to know what your experience has been using it. And I got to figure out why this thing is not coming in. It may be, I think I actually know. Inside of this React hook here, this thing is not updating based on anything. So actually, I want this to update if the public ID changes. I think this might be it. So let's take a look. There's our picture. Let's upload the flip side of that, which is one of these maybe. Upload, and hopefully we stick with the Ruby on Rails thing. There we go. So now we see that we get our new image is uploaded, which is cool. And then in home, we still should be able to see, like, here's all the different images that are out there for people, so we can kind of scroll through them. One of the things I wanted to do is let's just look at like an image card. They have cards in here. And I'm just going to copy this HTML here and kind of use the card here for the gallery. And this is going to display an image. And what do I want to do with this? So all those images are going to have that same data. And then I really want to wrap the image inside of here. So I don't know the best way to do that. So here's the card image top and the source. Right, so I'm not sure the best way to combine that with using this image component here. One of the things we can do is, instead of using the React Cloudinary hooks directly, what's the Cloudinary JavaScript npm? Zerify has nothing against it. I would use it if I feel like it's needed in the project that I'm working on. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I just haven't really felt that need myself, so I'm kind of right there with you, I think. Do I have... Let's look at the image up here. The image component is using use Cloudinary, not regular Cloudinary. Let's see the usage here. Cloudinary URL. Yeah, let's do this. Let's try this out. So let's do an npm install to input file types. Oh yeah, my favorite language is JavaScript, but I wouldn't write anymore because of TypeScript, because it's awesome and catches errors. It's a must. That's cool. Yeah, as long as, obviously, if it works for you, it works for you. There is, like, I think when people get in a situation with something like TypeScript and they're comfortable with it, like you are, you kind of forget that there's like some setup and some things that took place beforehand to learn and just kind of figure out how to do it. So it takes an investment up front, but I agree. Like, there's definitely strong benefits there in terms of just writing good code and making sure that you can catch errors as quickly as possible. I wonder if yeah, okay, so Cloudinary is already installed. So let me grab, let's grab a reference to Cloudinary up here. This is actually doing a require. I think that's okay. And let's call the URL, because we basically want to generate a URL for each of these. And I'm hoping that we can pass in that ID. So, oh, actually not in here. That's not what we want. Let's leave that one alone. Let's import Cloudinary there. And then let's use this URL thingy. And let's do our card for each one of these. And we can get rid of... Actually, that's going to take a configuration for... Huh. I wonder if... Is that still... Is that an extra div there? No, it should be fine. All right, I've kind of messed this stuff up now. Let's get rid of this stuff to start. Let's just see what we got. So that stuff is working. So let me go back to the Bootstrap card. So this is what I want to use. And that should be okay if I get rid of... that. But it's not. I'm not sure what I'm missing here. Am I not? Let me just map for each image I want to return this stuff. I don't understand how that's not working. I'm confused. Well, let's start with, we could just start copying this stuff. This will be a card. And then what, we'll have a card, card image top, card image top. And is that the image itself? Yeah. So inside of here, has anyone tried recoil from React? I've never heard of recoil. I'd be interested to learn about what that is actually, but I don't know. But inside of this image, let's apply a class name of, what did we say this was? Card image top. Card image top. Let's start this back up because I don't know exactly what this is going to look like. So card image top, and then we'll have a, we'll just have a card title here. So here's our card title, and this will be the image.username. So we want to show who owns this thing. We can add a and there. Let's refresh. New state management like Redux? No, I've never heard of that. I'd be interested. I use the context API in React. We talked about that a little bit earlier on, actually. I really enjoy. I mean, it's super, super simple to me to implement. So, but yeah, I'd be curious to see that. Did I refresh this page? Lots of errors. Can I read property split? Cloudinary. I wonder if image, what does this return? This returns an image. And in this case, maybe I can do card image top. I don't think that's the error that I'm having though. Can I read property split? Huh. Oh, I'm probably not. Am I still passing in those same things? The image ID there, the cloud name, transform, and then I don't need to pass the class name. Huh. Messing things up left and right over here. I've heard of it. It's from Facebook. Haven't got to try it yet. Interesting. Yeah, if you end up trying that out, I'd love to hear what you thought about it. I think maybe what I'll do, I'm just going to take this thing and put it right inside of here. Also started to use context more often. Yeah, I think context is really simple. And just it works out really well. So yeah, I'm definitely with you there. Is this should still be passing in the same stuff, right? Image ID, and transform. Huh. I'm not sure where that is going wrong. Cannot read property split of undefined. Do I have all of, I imagine I have all the same data. Log, cloud, name, public, ID, and transforms. Are those coming through okay? Maybe it's a problem in the image. Maybe it's a problem in here where the public ID is not. So let's just double check if there is not a public ID, return. I'm really confused. So if I go back to what I had, I wonder if I just broke that image component completely, or if I've changed something that... No, so something's just changed in here. So it's not the stuff that I just had. Rats. This is what I get for messing around with stuff. And it's odd because I'm not getting... in my gallery. Let me make sure I'm getting all of that data back. Oh, it's this. God damn it. That thing. Rats. Okay. Is that going to work? Yes. Thank God. All right. Now, for each one of these, I want this to be a card. And I think I've already applied the card image top to that thing. And then we'll have card title. And we'll have this be at, and then user, or what is it? Image. Username. And I probably want these. Probably want these to be all the same height. So maybe that becomes like a height. Maybe we do like a square thing and crop fit, maybe. That didn't work. How did having that require break the app? That's a good question. I don't, well, so require is happens in Node. So like front-end JavaScript uses the import syntax. Node uses the require syntax. So you don't have access to, you're not using Node in your React code. So that's probably why. More specific than that, I'm not really sure. I would have thought this could, what does scale do? Like if I try to scale that thing into those dimensions, that's going to make it look really ugly. Yeah. So what I want to set, I guess I want them all to have, well, I really want them to fill. So what are the different crops? Let's look at Cloudinary crops. Let's see their different options for that. And it looks like they have a fit. Scale fit limit. Fill maybe? I don't know why it does that many requests to the thing. I would probably change that out. So there's, I mean, that's like kind of basic there. What else does the Bootstrap card give us? Because it's got like padding and stuff in it too. So there's style equals width 18. So you set a specific style, card image top, and then card body. That's what it is. So inside of here should be card body. All right, now let's look at these. So that looks okay. I mean, that's not the best. And maybe let's set the height in here of 200. So 300 by 200. Yeah, that'll work. Let's do, we've got this. Is it the navbar? Where is this padding up at the top coming from? Is that our container? I think. Let's go back to our app.js and don't set, all right, let's just do a margin top of 1 for the navbar. And then margin bottom of 5. Let's see what that looks like. We could probably create even more. I wonder actually what does, well, let's do this. Margin 3. Where is, did I not put that on the navbar? All right, that looks okay. And then I think one of the things that I can do with each one of these LIs is do like a margin left 3. Let's see if that'll space out this first one. I would have thought that stuff would be like taken care of, but I guess not. This thing, margin left. Oh, actually margin right is what I want. So let's do margin right of 3, and let's just add that to each one of the LIs. Okay, so that's starting to look decent. We've got our dev setups. Let's go to the home page and let's give this a class name of MB. We can do MB5 there as well, and not MG but MB, so that'll be margin bottom. And then cool, so that's looking pretty good. I think one of the things we can change inside of app.js too is not just return nothing if it's loading, but let's say loading, and then in this case we'll do the P underneath the nav bar, so loading there, and otherwise not loading. So after we finish loading, oops, not that one. Let's show the actual content. So let's try that. And then it shows. That's cool. All right, I think we've been like 2 hours now, which is kind of crazy. I know probably only have a few people that are hanging out and watching. Anyone have any questions or comments on what we've got here? I'm going to send a recap email if you sign up through Podia at least. For the source code and the demo and all that kind of stuff if you want to check it out. But I think it's pretty cool for now, and I want to continue to make some progress on this and have this be something that I can share a little bit more proudly. But I mean, that basically does what I'm looking for it to do. So actually I'm going to checking in with ability. to update user profile setup image. That'll be good, and we'll just push that. So that'll be out there. It'll actually be deployed where once it actually finishes building, you can act at this URL. So you'll have access to that in a little bit. Feel free to use that. Ask me questions later on, and I will send a recap in email, and then you can ask more questions there too. So anyway, thanks everyone for being here. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you later on. See ya.